Hollywood is loud when it wants attention. This moment wasn't. Two people stepped onto a red carpet and instantly shifted the energy in the room. No drama, no overperformance, just calm, deliberate confidence. The kind that doesn't ask to be noticed, yet somehow dominates the frame. What caught people off guard wasn't the outfit. It wasn't the flashes. It was how intentional everything felt. The timing, the closeness, the silence. Online, the reactions started rolling in almost immediately. Some called it elegance. Others said it looked like old-school Hollywood power. A few even joked that it felt less like a premiere and more like a warning shot. Because when someone this visible suddenly moves this quietly, it's never random. And that's where things get interesting. This wasn't just another red carpet appearance. It was a signal. A carefully placed moment that hinted at a much bigger shift happening behind the scenes. What most people didn't realize is that this night wasn't about fashion, romance, or even the movie itself. It was about control. And once you understand who was standing there and why, the entire story looks very different. But to see that, you have to go back to where this partnership really began. When they stepped onto the carpet, the noise didn't spike, it dipped. They didn't play to the cameras or work opposite angles as most celebrity couples do. Instead, they stayed close, almost coordinated. Not clinging, but clearly moving as a unit. She wore a sculpted gown that felt more archival than trendy, structured, controlled. Finished with a necklace pulled from cinematic history, not a sponsor's wish list. He kept it simple. Classic tux. No statement pieces, no distractions. The contrast made one thing obvious. This wasn't about stealing attention. It was about owning it. People online picked up on it instantly. The comments weren't about best dressed. They were about presence. About how the pair looked less like stars celebrating a movie and more like producers surveying their territory. Some fans called it power couple energy. Others said it felt like something out of another era, when Hollywood couples didn't chase headlines because they were the headline. What really fueled the buzz was how unforced it all felt. No viral moments, no rehearsed poses, just two people standing there like they knew exactly why they were there and exactly what would come next. And that's what made this moment linger. Because red carpets are usually about spectacle, this one felt strategic. And once you notice that, a bigger question starts forming. How did a relationship this private become one of the most quietly influential partnerships in the industry? This story didn't start with sparks or instant chemistry. At the time, she wasn't looking for anything. Her career was accelerating fast, her life already in motion, and romance was nowhere near the priority list. He wasn't a headline name either. No spotlight, no celebrity orbit, just someone working behind the scenes on a film set. They met in 2013 while working on the same project. Different roles, different lanes, the kind of setup where people usually pass each other and move on. But this one didn't disappear. By her own admission, it crept in slowly. No dramatic turning point, no love at first sight, just familiarity turning into something harder to ignore. Later, she would admit she thought he was the best-looking guy in the room, but even then she didn't act on it. That hesitation mattered, because as her visibility exploded, most people assumed any serious relationship would come with noise, pressure, and inevitable burnout. Instead, this one moved quietly, almost stubbornly, off the radar. No strategic leaks, no staged appearances, no power couple branding, and that wasn't accidental. From the beginning, this relationship operated on a different rulebook. One built around trust, shared work ethic, and staying invisible when everyone else was chasing attention. What no one realized at the time was that this same low-profile approach wasn't just shaping their personal life, it was laying the foundation for something much bigger. Before the wedding, before the headlines, before the brand deals, they built a company. In 2014, while her career was climbing and his stayed firmly behind the camera, they co-founded a production banner that didn't look flashy on paper. No loud mission statements, no instant domination, just a quiet focus on stories that most studios were passing on. At the time, it raised eyebrows. Why risk momentum on projects that weren't obvious blockbusters? Why lean into uncomfortable characters, morally messy stories, and female leads that didn't exist to be liked? That was the point. Lucky Chap wasn't designed to chase trends. It was built to exploit the gaps in Hollywood's thinking. Stories executives kept calling too risky or too niche suddenly had a home, and a star willing to back them with her reputation. Then the results started speaking. A brutal biopic that rewrote how audiences saw her. A pop culture phenomenon that turned a toy into a global event. Each success quietly reinforced the same message. This wasn't an actress dabbling in production. This was a long game. Behind the scenes, their roles were clear. One in front of the camera when it mattered, the other structuring deals with managing talent and keeping the machine running without needing attention. And that balance, that's rare. Because while Hollywood is full of celebrity production companies, very few are built on restraint instead of ego. But Lucky Chap wasn't just a business move. It was proof that this partnership worked best when it stayed focused on leverage, not spotlight. And that strategy would soon attract a collaborator who thrived in discomfort, controversy, and sharp edges. Choosing this project raised eyebrows for a reason. At this point, the safer move would have been obvious. Lean into crowd pleasers, repeat what worked, protect the image that just conquered the box office. Most stars do exactly that and fade into predictability. She didn't. Instead, she stepped into a story that's messy, obsessive, and emotionally unforgiving. A classic novel that doesn't flatter its characters and doesn't care if the audience feels comfortable. Playing Catherine Earnshaw isn't glamorous. It's volatile, demanding, easy to get wrong. And that's what makes the choice interesting. Behind the camera was a director known for stripping the polish off her characters and letting them spiral. In front of it was a lead willing to be unlikable, intense, and hard to root for. That combination alone signaled a shift. Then there's how the power was split. He took the executive producer credit, control without visibility. She carried both the producer title and the lead role, creative influence without distance. Together, it formed a setup that insiders recognize immediately. Maximum leverage, minimal noise. Some industry watchers have suggested, carefully, that this move isn't about box office at all. It's about credibility, about reminding everyone that range matters more than comfort, especially after massive commercial success. Nothing about this choice screams easy win. And that's the point. Because when someone deliberately walks away from the safest path, it usually means they're aiming for something bigger than applause. And the timing of this pivot, that's where the story takes another turn. Late last year, something shifted. Not on a red carpet, not in an interview, not on social media. They welcomed their first child, a baby boy, and then did something that felt almost radical by Hollywood standards. They said nothing. No name reveal, no soft focus photos, no carefully worded captions. Just absence. In an industry that monetizes every milestone, that kind of restraint stands out, and it immediately triggered speculation. Fans started reading between the lines, wondering what this meant for her career, her choices, and the pace she'd been moving at. Some assumed a slowdown. Others predicted a pivot towards safer roles. A few even questioned whether this was the beginning of a quieter chapter. But that assumption doesn't really hold up, because strategic silence isn't withdrawal, it's control. By keeping their personal life sealed off, they remove themselves from the public negotiation. No narratives to correct, no access to manage, no expectations to satisfy. There's also been online chatter, clearly framed as speculation, that becoming a parent may have sharpened her interest in darker, more emotionally complex material rather than softened it. Fewer roles maybe, but higher stakes. What's clear is this: privacy became part of the strategy. And while many stars disappear after major life changes, this move did the opposite. It created space. Space to choose projects on their terms. Space to reset the conversation. Space to prepare for what comes next. Because while the public was focused on what wasn't being shared, something else was already in motion. Right after the premiere buzz settled, the reports started circulating. Not confirmations, not press releases, just industry chatter, carefully framed that another major project was lining up behind the scenes. A high-profile franchise, a familiar name, and the shift in scale that didn't match the idea of retreat at all. Multiple outlets have claimed that there's an Ocean's Universe project in development, with her positioned at the center. A prequel, a reinvention, something designed to stand apart from the originals rather than compete with them. And according to those same reports, another A-list name could be joining the cast. If true, and that's important, this is still unverified, it fits a pattern. Prestige, risk, then global appeal, then back again. This is how long-term players operate. They don't abandon commercial projects, they time them. One film restores artistic credibility, the next expands the reach, and all of it runs through the same controlled pipeline. Behind it all, the structure stays familiar. She moves between performance and production. He manages the framework, the deals, and the logistics that never make headlines. No public friction, no ego leaks. What's quietly forming isn't just a career, it's an ecosystem. An actress who doesn't wait for permission, a producer who doesn't chase visibility, and a company that keeps proving it can work at both extremes of the industry. Which brings a story full circle. Because once you stop viewing these moments as isolated events, one thing becomes clear. Most people read moments like this at face value. A premiere, a couple, a successful career continuing on schedule. But that interpretation misses the point. What we're really watching is someone stepping out of the cycle that traps most stars, where momentum dictates choices, visibility replaces leverage, and success quietly narrows the future. This path looks different. Less explanation, fewer appearances, sharper decisions. The red carpet wasn't a celebration, it was a checkpoint. Proof that visibility is now optional, not necessary. That power doesn't need noise once it's established. Together, they've built something that doesn't depend on trends or approval cycles, a structure that lets them move between prestige and scale without asking permission from the industry that once controlled the narrative. That's why this moment felt different. Not louder, just firmer. And if this pattern holds, the most important moves won't happen in front of cameras at all. They'll happen quietly, months before anyone realizes the game has shifted. By the time the headlines catch up, the next phase will already be locked in. And that's the real story hiding in plain sight.